Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free, head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. We are doing a live podcast here on potassium and your immune system. Potassium is an essential mineral and it has major effects on the sodium potassium pump, how your cells function, energy, mood, blood pressure, has a huge effect on the adrenal glands. I'm excited to dive in here with Evan Brand. Evan, how are you doing today, man?
Doing really well. So we were looking at some papers on this thing, and turns out a national survey found that approximately 98%, not 9, not 8, 98% of Americans are not meeting the recommended potassium intake. A Western diet is to blame as it favors processed foods over whole plant foods such as fruits, vegetables, beans, and nuts. Everybody knows that the American diet is crap, and it's not just the American diet, right? This is the standard European diet. This is the standard Australian diet. You know, kind of most developed first world countries, they're doing too much potassium devoid food. And let's tie that directly into what we were also looking at, which is this paper. This based on the names of these doctors, and yeah, actually, it shows it right here. Wenzhou, Zhejiang Province, China. So yeah, so this is a Chinese hospital and Chinese medical universities. This study that came out of hypokalemia and clinical implications in patients with coronavirus. And long story short, people that had potassium deficiencies, they had severe hypokalemia, which is the technical term for potassium deficiency. And it said here that the patients responded well to potassium supplements and they were inclined to recovery. So they don't say directly, hey, low potassium means you're going to get the virus, or low potassium means you're going to end up really sick. But they just talk about how, because of this whole ACE2 enzyme thing that you and I've covered many times, and the whole relationship to the virus, that one of the side effects of the issue can be low potassium. And if you're already low potassium to begin with, then you can end up in potentially fatal shape, which is not good.
100%. And potassium is very important because our sodium potassium pump requires potassium. So what happens is you have your cell, and then you have sodium inside the cell, and you have potassium outside of the cell. And they do a little switcherooski, right? This is called the sodium potassium pump. The enzyme that's involved in making that happen is ATP. And then you know it's an enzyme because of the word ACE next to it, ATP ACE. So ATP is important because ATP is generated from your mitochondria, right? We have glycolysis outside of the cell in the cytoplasm, and then we have our Krebs cycle, right? And we have our electron transport chain within the cell. We generate 36 to 38 or so ATP from that. That ATP, part of that ATP runs this sodium potassium pump. So that ATP takes that sodium that's in the cell and the potassium outside of the cell. They do a dance, they switch. So it's 3 coming out, 2 coming in, right? Boom. Just like that. And the cell needs that healthy fluidity to work and to communicate. And if we don't have that healthy fluidity, we're going to have side effects. So one of the big side effects is we're going to have muscle or nerve issues, because potassium and sodium are very important for the muscles / nerves to work, right? Nerves help control muscle. So very, very important there. You're also going to see it with potential mood issues as well, because sodium and potassium play an intricate role with the adrenal glands. And part of the reason why people's potassium gets low outside of a poor diet is going to be because of adrenal function. Now, typically with adrenals, your aldosterone starts to go low, which is a mineral corticoid that exists in the cortex of the adrenals. And what happens is, as your aldosterone starts going low, your sodium can start to drop. And as your sodium drops, sometimes your potassium can look like it's not too bad. It can look actually a little bit high, but you could still actually have potassium issues because of the fact that your adrenals are weak and you're peeing out a lot of your minerals. So muscle and cramps are going to be a big deal. Weakness and fatigue, because your nerves need that. Also, if you don't have good sodium potassium pump issues, you probably have energy issues because the mitochondria, healthy mitochondrial function for ATP is needed for that sodium potassium pump to work. So potassium works better when there's the ATP. So that whole sodium potassium pump works. We talked about cramping as well because of the muscles needing the wiring, the fluid wiring, sodium and potassium and minerals. So cramping is going to be a big deal. We're also going to have potentially digestive issues, right? Your bowel movements and your motility starts becoming slower when your potassium drops. So we need healthy levels of potassium so we have good bowel movements. Also, heart palpitations. We need potassium and magnesium so our heart can pump, right? Our heart's a muscle as well. So if your heart's skipping beats or beating harder or faster, that's a sign of palpitations, which could be from that. And also just achy muscles, muscle breakdown, feeling tired and stiff, right? The breakdown of muscle is known as rhabdomyolysis or myolysis, right? And that breakdown is going to be very much helped with good potassium levels, right? You're going to have less muscle breakdown with potassium levels being adequate. Of course, tingling and numbness issues are going to be a big one. Difficulty, using your lung muscles, mood stuff because of the adrenals as well. I'll pause and give you a chance to comment.
I'm glad you mentioned magnesium too, because you and I, we're kind of looking with a microscope today, right? We're kind of spot picking
Right.
one thing to talk about, but all these people that are deficient in potassium, I'm sure they're going to be deficient in magnesium as well. I mean, we know how hard it is to get it from the food, even if it's organic, because the soil is so depleted. So it's a really, really
Exactly.
common problem. And then on that whole mood changes, I just wanted to talk about that real quick. There was one study, and this wasn't necessarily a causation, but just a correlation
hmm
study that we were looking at here. 20% of patients with mental disorders that came into this psychiatric ward, 20% of them had potassium deficiency. So it's not saying directly the potassium deficiency caused the mood issue. There could very well be other things going on. You and I have covered hundreds of times about gut infections, what could lead to mineral and electrolyte imbalances. You hit on the adrenals. So, of course, as we know, when we hear something like that, we say, okay, well, if you just give these people potassium, are they not going to have mood issues anymore? And the answer is they could still have mood issues even if they supplement potassium. But it's interesting, and it's something that often gets skipped. This is really low hanging fruit. Somebody could go to something very nuanced as this particular herb for this retrovirus or this bug, but the person's just simply dehydrated and they're not getting enough electrolytes. It could be something very, very simple like that.
100%. And low potassium is so common, just like low magnesium is common. I think you said 98% are going to have some kind of an issue
Yeah, and I think
with
this study
potassium.
I think this study I was referencing is probably just a survey where they looked at diet and figured out whether people were even getting uh, the recommended daily amount. And 98% of people were not getting the recommended daily amount or RDI, the recommended daily intake. So I guarantee magnesium is in the same boat, probably 90+%.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And then also, there are medications that are going to affect potassium, right? We know a lot of the blood pressure medications, as well as things like water pills or diuretics. So if you're on a BP medication, right, there's a good chance some of that's going to be actually driving further potassium deficiency. So low potassium levels are super common because of that. Also, we're going to have problems with potassium if we consume too much alcohol, right? Alcohol is going to cause us to pee a lot more potassium out because things like diuretics are going to cause you to lose more minerals, right? Diuretics basically activate a hormone that causes you to kind of continue to pee. And the more you pee with a diuretic in your system, whether it's excess coffee or even excess alcohol, you're going to pee out a lot of those minerals. So that's kind of like vitally important, right?
And even
And
yeah,
so
and even tea. I mean, even tea could be to blame too. I think herbal teas can be great, but there is somewhat of a diuretic effect to certain teas as well. So if you're just like sipping on tea all day and not drinking enough just straight water, or our preference, water with a pinch of salt or water with some electrolytes added to it, this can happen easily. And this is not just a problem in athletes. People hear the word electrolyte and they think you only need that if you're in the NFL. No, you need electrolytes just to function.
exactly. The problem with a lot of people with their potassium is it's hard to get too much if you're taking it orally, right? Obviously, you go back to like the lethal injection. People are actually, in the lethal injection in the prison system, people are actually being killed by potassium IV, right? Or injection. Now, it's hard to get too much potassium orally because some of the vomiting and diarrhea side effects and the nausea side effects that you get from actually having too low a potassium, well, guess what? You actually have similar side effects when you go too high. So usually you get so nauseous and you'll either throw up or you'll get diarrhea. So it's very difficult. The only way to really do it orally is going to be with an oral supplementation, and you'd have to do a lot of it, and all those symptoms would come into play. So it'd be really high. The only way you can get your potassium levels to the point where you're going to be too high is going to be on an IV. And what they do actually on an IV to reverse potassium overdoses, they do a bicarbonate infusion. Bicarbonate actually neutralizes that high level of potassium. But some of the major causes are going to be diarrhea, right? So if you have a parasite infection or a gut infection that's causing chronic loose stools, guess what? You may be having low potassium because of your gut. I have some patients that need 5 or 6 or 7 grams a day of potassium supplementation, whether it's because of a stress or a malabsorption issue, but all of their low potassium symptoms go away when they hit that level, meaning like the cramping, the twitching, the heart, the mood stuff all go away when they hit that higher level. So, I mean, the goal is let's fix the stress so you're not dumping the minerals as much. Let's fix the gut so we're absorbing. But, I typically don't recommend doing more than 1 to 2 grams of potassium supplementally. And we'll do a good high quality chelate, whether it's a bisglycinate or a potassium bicarb, or we'll do a potassium citrate like in New Salt, which is a cheap source. And then we'll try to plug in the rest via the diet. But if we have to go above, we'll do it incrementally, and we'll start looking for those low potassium symptoms to go away. But alcohol is going to be a big one. Chronic kidney issues, uncontrolled type 1 diabetes will do it. Diarrhea, like we mentioned, so gut issues. Diuretics is a big one. So if you're on a diuretic on a blood pressure med side, that could be a problem. Sweating a lot. So if you're sweating a lot, yeah, you're going to need a lot more minerals. Again, how Gatorade was figured out, I think it was the 1968, late 60s. I want to say it was the Orange Bowl, one of these big bowl games. The Florida Gators were actually playing halftime. I think one of the exercise physiologists or PT people, trainers, said, hey, let's get these electrolytes in. And they had a kick butt second half, and they killed it and won the game. And part of it was the electrolytes they put in. Now we have all these Gatorade substitutes, but they were called Gator Lights, right? Gator Lights, not Gatorade. They tasted like absolute crap. So what you have now are a whole bunch of minerals with a whole bunch of sugar and dyes. Back then, they just had the minerals and it tasted awful. But from a performance standpoint, they did really well because the other team didn't have it. So their muscles were functioning better. So sweating, not having enough folate or B vitamins, having high amounts of aldosterone, whether it's a tumor or just our adrenals being overstimulated. Some antibiotics can actually have problems as well. And then vomiting too much can create low potassium too. And then obviously just a junk food diet. We'll talk about what it takes to have enough potassium in a minute.
Yeah, and one thing too that people miss out on, a lot of these new companies, they're doing a good job because they're getting away from the corn syrup and
Yep.
the fake sugar and all that stuff. But you still do need, based on some of the stuff we've looked at, I believe you need a little bit of glucose to help get potassium and your other minerals and electrolytes into the cell. So you'll see if you look at, they call it ORS, oral rehydrating solution. This is like the military grade electrolytes. There has to be a little bit of sugar. There has to be a little bit of a blood sugar spike. I believe it somehow opens the channel to let the electrolytes in. I'm not sure the exact, molecular level stuff that's going on, but I've read into formulas that are just stevia or just monk fruit, some of these natural sweeteners, that if they don't affect blood sugar, you don't actually get the benefit. So when you look at legit, like military grade electrolytes, they have a little bit of glucose spike associated with it.
Yeah, and the glucose is better, right? The problem is a lot of these places, they have fructose, and fructose doesn't target the muscles the same way as glucose does. So if you're looking for an electrolyte formula, you really one, you can get the electrolytes by itself, but then if you're doing a lot of sweating or a lot of glycogen depleting activity, whether it's football or some kind of a sport that requires a lot of sprinting or running, then you'd want a formula that's going to have more glucose in it for the sugar source, not fructose. Fructose is a problem because it hits the liver more than the muscles. Glucose hits the muscles more than the liver. And like you mentioned, that helps open up that cell with the insulin. It helps replete the glycogen levels, and it helps that sodium potassium pump work better if you're using a lot of glucose or if you're sweating a lot. But if you're not and you're just the average everyday person, probably getting the minerals in without the extra glucose is probably okay.
Yeah, we talk about mold and detox and sauna and all of that, but I'm really shocked at how many people are doing sauna 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week and they're just drinking water. I'm like, are you nuts? You got to be doing electrolytes. That is a critical component
Yes.
of detox, in my opinion, is you have to make sure you're replenishing and rehydrating because you're losing a lot of minerals. You're not just magically sweating out heavy metals and mold toxin. You're sweating out minerals and electrolytes. You have to replenish those. And you were drinking a green juice earlier. I think you said your green juice had like 1,200 milligrams per bottle or something crazy.
Yeah, this is a great brand right here. It's called Evolution. They sell them in Austin. They sell them even in Target now, which is kind of cool. Like, I like the fact that a lot of these healthier things are coming into kind of more mainstream box stores. But organic greens, I'll typically drink the celery juice, but I've been doing the essential greens. They have the celery is the first ingredient, so it's still great. I love celery because of the minerals in there, the electrolytes, and then potassium is really high in celery. But it's got cucumber, spinach, romaine, kale, lime, and parsley. And then they have a green devotion. Instead of lime, it's got lemon. So they go back and forth, but there's no actual fruit outside of the lemon or lime, which is pretty low sugar. And this has got just alone, it's got almost about 1,200 milligrams of potassium. So I got about 25 to 30% all my potassium right here. So that's pretty cool. So I just kill that after I have my really nice, good breakfast with collagen. And then I'm already a quarter of the way through my potassium needs for the day, which is great.
Don't you feel more like your thirst is quenched too? Like when I drink regular water compared to something like that, it's just not as quenching to me as the good stuff, the green juices. They're more thirst quenching. I'll do like a little bit of electrolyte, throw a pinch in, like with some beet powder and stuff like that, and I feel great. If I'm just doing filtered water and I'm not using RO, I'm using like a carbon system. Even then, though, water just doesn't cut it for me. I like a little extra bang.
Well, I think a lot of people, what they're really craving is they're craving some water, but they're also craving minerals, right? And so because they're craving minerals, if there's no minerals in there, yeah, you're going to feel like you're missing out on something, right? So that's definitely a big part of what's happening is your body's craving the minerals. And if they're not there, that's a problem. Also, I'm pretty sure Cushing's is going to be another potassium issue, right? Cushing's and potassium is going to be a big problem as well. So, what does that mean? So the kidneys excrete large amounts of potassium when you make a lot of cortisol. So what does that mean? So if you have Cushing's, that's kind of more tumor induced where the cortisol is so high, probably because there's some kind of a tumor. But what if you're in between, right? What if your adrenals are just overstimulated? You're not on the Cushing's disease side, but you're just making a lot of cortisol because of chronic stress. So it's possible your chronic adrenal stress could be causing you to dump a whole bunch of potassium out. So that's where when you're getting stress, under stress, physical, chemical, emotional, maybe that gluten is causing the stress, right? You're going to probably need more potassium, more minerals. Potassium and magnesium are the most common ones. It's so hard to get them. Most people get enough sodium and chloride because of just it's in their natural junk food. They don't get the good quality from like a good high quality sea salt or Redmond's real salt, but they're getting some. It's really the magnesium and potassium I'm seeing as the big missing pieces. And then today we're really focusing on potassium.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, think about what happens when you're dealing with somebody that's really stressed, right? They may have issues with constipation. They may have issues with their sleep. They may have issues with their blood pressure. They may have issues with anxiety, as you hit on earlier, potentially heart palps. So all of that to me sounds like stress-induced mineral depletion, which then causes other symptoms. Then you're stressed about your blood pressure being elevated. So then that cortisol dump and adrenaline dumps more minerals and then it become more mineral deficient. So you see how this thing can get out of control. And it sounds really cliche and corny to say, well, stress did it, but it really does. And it's not just the emotional, it's the gut stress. It's all of it that we always hit on.
100%. Also, people are talking about in the messaging, well, what about if I'm in ketosis and I don't have glucose to open the cell? Well, I mean, we're just talking about extra exercise, right? Extra exercise, extra sweating. If you're doing a lot of glycogen depleting kind of movement or exercise, you're probably going to want to do some type of a glucose kind of refeed the night before the movement. And a lot of athletes who do keto still have a punctuated kind of glycogen refeed the night before, just so they're tapping their muscles out, because your muscles can hold anywhere between 250 to 300 to 400 milligrams or grams of glucose or glycogen, right? Glucose in the muscles is glycogen. It's stored, right? That's the storage form of glucose in the muscles. So a lot of people, they'll be in ketosis most of the time. They'll do a refeed the night before. That way they have access to that glucose the next day. And again, depending on how depleting or how long you're exercising, you probably want a nice little bit of a glucose electrolyte drink. And again, that's not most of the time. That's going to be just more timed up according to exercise and kind of what your metabolic needs are. But for most people, a good natural Gatorade source, guess what? Coconut water. It's got a little bit of glucose, a little bit of sugar in there, and it has a lot of potassium. So that can kind of be Mother Nature's natural kind of Gatorade. It just depends on what you're doing. If your kid's playing football and sweating a ton, they may need a little bit more than that. You're going to have to just feel it out, see what works, test it on your own when you're practicing and playing and see how you feel with it. And you may not need pure coconut water, maybe just dilute it half and half with a really good, clean mineral water. And then you have a little bit of glucose, a little bit of extra potassium, plus the other minerals working for you.
Yep. You want to hit a little bit of the diet piece?
Yes.
You and I were kind of looking at some of this before. You pointed out, interestingly, and we've probably talked about this in previous, but if you look at 100 grams of food as a measurement, the potassium per 100 gram of avocado is higher significantly than bananas. If you look at a full avocado versus a full cup of banana, which maybe is a full banana, you've got almost double in the avocado. So, as a kid, I remember thinking potassium banana, and that's just kind of this thing you grow up with. But in reality, there's things that are much, much higher, like beet greens takes the cake with number one here, 1,300 milligram per cup of potassium. That is insanity.
Exactly. So most people don't get it. So if you're sitting there and you're on keto, right? Well, what are the biggest, easiest things you can do? Well, beet greens is number one. Okay. What's number two? Salmon, high quality fish. That's per 100 grams. So what's 100 grams? 100 grams is about 3.3 ounces ish. Let me just double check that. 100 grams in ounces. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
That sounds about right, because it says here potassium per 6 ounce fillet of salmon is 1,000.
So 3.5. So what does that mean? So, all right. So if you're keto, right, and you want to really be on top of this, or you're keeping your carbs down, what does that mean? That means, okay, if I eat 7 ounces of meat, 7 ounces of fish, I'm at 1,300 milligrams of potassium. Boom, you're right there. And then you throw in some beet greens with it, right? That's 3 ounces worth, right? 100 grams. You're at another 1 gram almost. And then guess what? You cut up an avocado with that, right? Big avocado, another per avocado. You're about 1 gram per full avocado. You're set, right?
I want to look up cassava, because I love cassava. And what if you did some guacamole with cassava chips? I wonder if you're getting any.
Oh yeah, so we could do yucca and potassium, because yucca is the same thing as cassava. Yeah, so 1 cup of cassava is 558 milligrams.
Boom. So cassava chips. And I mean, now some would argue, well, the baking process and whatever of the chips, okay, whatever, but it's still better than zero.
Yeah, but a lot of times if you don't bake it or cook it, you're not going to be able to get the nutrients anyway. Like if you look at broccoli raw versus broccoli steamed, you're going to see the nutritional value and the content goes up once you cook it, because then the fiber is broken down so you can actually access some of those nutrients.
Yep.
So cooking a lot of times can make certain nutrients more bioavailable too. It's not cooking bad all the time.
I know. I'm
right?
just thinking of the one devil's advocate out there saying, "Oh, well, you're advocating us eating, chips fried in avocado oil." It's like, yeah, I am. I think they'll be great.
I think it's okay. I think it's fine. I mean, don't make it a staple, but I mean, I think if you're going to have something like that, it's all about not going to the place in your head about hey, what do you have to cut out versus, hey, what can I substitute? When you have a substitution mindset versus the cutting out mindset, one, you feel a lot more free and you feel like you're not missing out on stuff, because there's always a good, healthy substitution option that works. So let's kind of just create a simple day. What does a day of potassium look like? So off the bat, on the vegetable side, 1 cup of, your typical vegetable greens will be anywhere between 500 milligrams to about 800 milligrams, depending on the vegetables, right? 1 avocado is going to be about 1 gram, right? 1 cup of Swiss chard is going to be about 1 gram. So you're really at the top with those. 1 cup of spinach is about 840 milligrams. And then you have on the lower side, which would be broccoli and Brussels sprouts, are closer to 500 milligrams. So just to kind of give you a sample day here, let's say we start out with a full avocado. Boom, you got 1 gram of potassium. So now you're really on the way there. If you do a serving of fish, like a good 6-ounce serving of fish, now what? Well, now another gram is added, right? No problem. All right. And then so now you're at about 2 grams. And then if you throw in a green juice like this, you're over 3. And then if you have a serving of squash or even white potato or sweet potato, well, now you're at another 500 to 800 milligrams. Okay, now you're at 35 to 3,800 milligrams. And then you just need about 4 more servings of vegetables. And most people, when they have veggies, they're probably going to have 2 servings at a time, right? They'll probably have close to a gram anyway. So you need about, I would say, about 4 to 6 servings of a good quality green vegetable. You're probably going to need 1 full avocado and then 1 full serving of a good quality fish. And then you'll get right about there. And then you can always add in an extra avocado. You could always add in a little bit more fish. You could always add in a little bit more beet greens or green vegetables to get you the rest of the way there, which is about 4,500 to 4,700. And then if you're doing a lot more sweating, you could always throw in some coconut water. So I would say about 6 servings of green vegetables, 1 full avocado, a good serving of fish, and then you can always plug and play coconut water or banana according to what your metabolic needs are. What do you think,
Yep.
Evan?
Yeah, and yeah, very good. And you didn't mention any nuts, which is another easy low-hanging fruit. So if you can get away
Yep.
with doing like pumpkin seeds, you can get a ton there. If you do almonds or almond butter, or you put a scoop of almond butter in a smoothie, you could
Yep.
get some there. Pistachios are super high. And then I was looking on this other food
Oh,
list here.
potatoes. Potatoes are huge. So, I mean, depending, white potatoes, if you're trying to keep low carb or autoimmune, fine, nix that, go to a squash or sweet potato. But potatoes are very, very high in potassium. People forget that.
Yep. Yep. I was looking on this nutrient density chart. Whey protein is number 4, 100 grams of whey. You're getting over 2 grams, 2,200 milligram potassium for 100 grams of whey. So if you can tolerate a good high quality grass fed whey protein, that'd be easy. Think about if you made a smoothie with some greens, some whey protein in there, you threw some pumpkin seeds and a scoop of almond butter, man, you're set.
How many milligrams in the whey?
2,200 for 100 grams of substance, 2,200 potassium.
Okay, per 100 grams in the whey
Uh-huh.
protein. Okay, so your typical serving is probably like 25. So how many again per 100?
2,200.
Okay, so if you're doing maybe 25 or 30 grams of protein, which is what most people do in a scoop, then you're probably about, what, 500 milligrams.
I'm going to look up, I'm going to see what the serving size is because you and I use a couple professional grass-fed powders. Let me see what it looks like. Yeah, so 1 scoop typically is 30 grams. So
Exactly. Yeah,
so
that's what
you
I was
could
saying.
almost call it 1/3 then. So, 2,200 divided by 3.
600-ish,
Yeah.
650,
Mm-hmm.
650-ish. Okay, that's cool. Someone else also asked about the vertigo and dizziness. Yeah, low potassium can cause that vertigo and dizziness kind of feeling. So we kind of gave the general recommendation of 45 to 4,700 milligrams of what you need per day on the potassium side. Most people aren't hitting it. If you're getting 6 to 8 servings of green vegetables, a high quality serving of good fish, and some potassium, and maybe potassium from a full avocado or a green drink or some extra safe starch, squash or sweet potato or white potato, you're going to be there. That's about 45 to 4,700 milligrams. Most people may need more if they're sweating or if they're under a lot of adrenal stress. So you may want to think about supplementing if you're still doing a great job on your food and you're not there. You may want to fill in the gap, or you may want to just try to add in a couple more of these nutrient dense foods that Evan and I just hit and see if that fixes the issue. So a lot of times people have these low potassium symptoms and they see it go away. The be all or end all I see is you're going to see a lot of heart stuff and a lot of muscle cramping stuff. Those are going to be big things. So if you see the heart start to get better or the cramping get better, that's an easy sign that you're on the right track. What do you
Yep.
think, Evan?
Well, I think this is fun and it's something that can't be ignored. So please address this, work on this, tweak it, and see how you feel. I definitely feel better. I feel in a better mood. I feel more energetic when I'm staying regular with getting enough electrolytes as a whole. So I think it could be a game changer. And we can run some of these analyses on your body. You and I kind of talked before we hit record about how the blood really doesn't change much. So looking at serum potassium may not be the best. So there are some other panels that we can look at. But as a whole, when we're looking at organic acids testing and stool testing and we're looking at gut infections, a lot of times we can infer just based on observation, symptoms, and what else is going on that you probably got an issue. So the good news is you can fix this. It's relatively cheap free to fix it outside of just tweaking the diet a bit at the grocery or farmers markets. But you can make it happen and make a big difference.
Exactly. And now someone else chimed in about the evolution drinks and the plastic. I'm not too worried about the plastic with these. These are all cold pressed. All right. So they're cold pressed. So that the juice that's put in here is cold, and these are refrigerated right away. So you're going to have leaching of plastics more when it hits UV light and or higher heat. So I'm not that concerned about plastic. Plus, these things have a short shelf life. So it's not like the juice is sitting in there for like a year. It's sitting in there a very short amount of time. It's not being exposed to UV light or high temperatures because it's being refrigerated, right? So you got to keep all that in mind. So I think if someone's worried about the plastic, I think the extra nutrients that's in there, it overweighs any risk from the plastic. Plus, you're not getting the heat, you're not getting warm substances, and you're not getting the UV light. So I think the plastic isn't as big of a deal versus like a Dasani water that sits in there for a year or two, and who knows if it's going to be exposed to light when it sits out back the convenience store or the supermarket docking
That's
station.
what I'm thinking, man. You go to the gas station, you see the guy taking a smoke break. You got the pallet of Dasani water sitting there getting blasted by the sun on a 100-degree day. And then he goes and puts the water in the shelf at the gas station. So yeah, I think you got to choose your battles, right? So, I mean, the other argument would be, well, if you were too busy this morning, you're working with the kids, you got to jump on here with me, you got to go into clinic after this, you might not have got that green juice, and you would have had 0 minerals and 0 potassium and 0 greens because you did no plastic, because you would have tried to go for a blender instead. So,
Exactly. Plus the higher quality grocery stores like Whole Foods, for instance, they got a big dock. The truck just goes right up to it. It's its full containment. It's in the store. They're refrigerating it. If you're going to a gas station and you're kind of limited, some gas stations have the Pellegrino. So you could always go buy glass at the gas station. That's probably a safer way, but I'm not necessarily worried about the plastic with that. But in general, a lot of sulfur in here anyway, which will help you detoxify any lingering estrogen. So if you have the option, I think it's worth it.
All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. I think we covered a lot. If you want to reach out clinically, Dr. J and I, we work around the world with people. We're very grateful. We're very blessed for the opportunity to help you guys. So thank you so much for not only commenting on these live videos, but of course, just being there clinically, because you help us learn. We learn so much from working with people one-on-one, way more than you learn in any book or any study, is seeing how do people feel? Hey, when you recommended this or that, my energy went up 20%. We love stuff like that. It's addicting for us. So we're very, very grateful. And if you do want to reach out clinically, please check out Dr. J, Justin at justinhealth.com, and me, Evan Brand, at evanbrand.com. And we'll be back next week to talk more.
Excellent chatting with you guys. And if you enjoy the content, put your comments down below. Really want to know what you guys think. And if you have any future podcast recommendation topics, we'd love to see it as well. And sharing is caring. Get this to your families and friends and people that can use this information to help take control of their health. All right, guys, enjoy the fabulous holiday weekend. Take care, y'all.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.